So, hello again, and it's another discussion. And what are we going to talk about today? Well, the students chose this topic, wearing school uniforms. In other words, should it be compulsory to wear a school uniform in Japan? Now, first of all, let's ask this question. Do you agree with this? Parents have to buy school uniforms if they want to send their kids there. And there's little incentive for retailers who sell the uniforms to lower their prices since it won't significantly increase their sales for you. In a recent study on parental attitudes about junior high schools by the Asahi Shimbun Digital, many parents reported spending around 100,000 yen for the complete set of winter, summer, and athletic uniforms, which are mandatory at their children's schools. So the question is, do you think this is right? Do you agree with this? The fact that retailers don't need to change their price. Well, as you probably can guess from this, that there are differences in educational costs between public and private schools in Japan, which has a strong effect. So if you look at the schools, for example, you can see that when you look at nursery, in fact, elementary, junior, and high school, you can see that the tuition generally is much higher, at least double to actually 4 times when it comes to elementary school. So that considered, do you think that adding additional extra costs such as uniforms should be required? Is this additional cost really necessary? Well, some people might think it's wasting money. Well, let's first of all think about the disadvantages of wearing a uniform, okay? So first of all, they can be expensive for parents, yes? Keeping a child in school uniforms may be expensive for parents and guardians than buying regular clothes would be. Often, uniforms are only available from a limited number of suppliers, and the lack of competition keeps prices high. Keeps them really high, in fact, I think. Or a uniform will include pricey items like blazers and dress shoes, which some families might struggle to afford, like myself. Disadvantage number 2 then. Well, uniforms limit students' self-expression. Another argument made against uniforms is that they limit students' self-expression. Teenagers in particular are famous for needing to express their emotions and their tastes in music, fashion, and art through clothing, hair, and piercings. School can be a tough on kids and teens as it is, without taking away one of the few areas where they can exert some control and express themselves, say opponents of school uniforms. Disadvantage 3, well, uniforms might be considered sexist. Some uniforms may strike students and parents as sexist. For example, if a uniform requires girls to wear skirts and pants are not allowed, some students and parents may object, leading to conflict with the school administration, as we're going to find out. Not all girls want to wear skirts, and some may resent being told to wear traditionally feminine garments. Also, if a student is unsure of their place on the gender spectrum or is experimenting with different forms of gender presentation, school uniforms can present a real challenge. Disadvantage number 4 then. Uniforms lead to more policing of students by the teachers. If a school has a uniform policy, it generally tries to enforce that policy by monitoring students' clothing and punishing students for violating uniform requirements. Of course, even schools that don't require uniforms may police student clothing that are deemed too revealing or offensive, but uniforms may add to the attention focus on student dress. This can make students feel that they are being scrutinized and punished for their appearance, which could have negative effects on students' self-esteem or attitudes towards the school. And if students are sent home for uniform violations, which does occur, they will miss valuable learning time. Plus, policing student uniforms takes time and effort on the part of administrators and the teachers themselves. So there's quite a few negative points about uniforms. So what about the other side of the table? Let's think about the benefits. Well, first of all, they can break down class barriers between students. When students don't wear school uniforms, it can be easy to spot kids with the most and the least economic privilege based on what they wear to school. One argument used in favor of school uniforms is that when kids wear uniforms, visible class markers between rich kids and poor kids are decreased or even eliminated, which can lead to more social mixing among economic lines. So there's greater mixing. A second benefit is that they can increase student focus. So another argument that often raised in favor of uniforms is that they may increase student focus. The evidence for this seems to be thin, but many proponents of uniforms argue that when students don't have clothing to notice, comment on, or respond to, they can spend more mental energy on learning. That's the key point, on learning. That's what schools are for. So uniforms, this argument goes, add to a sense of disciplined learning in school. Okay, moving on to a third benefit, they can increase the sense of community in a school. Uniforms may also build community in a school as students of all ages and alumni too, in other words, those who have graduated, bond or commiserate over the helmets they all associate with their school date. When schools that have traditionally required uniforms toy with removing the uniform requirement, it is often the alumni who speak out in favor of preserving the tradition of school uniforms. In other words, they had to wear it, why change it? And then a fourth benefit, school uniforms can promote safety. What do we mean by this? Well, in areas where students may be gang involved, uniforms can increase safety by preventing students from wearing clothing that declares intentionally or inadvertently gang affiliation. Some proponents of school uniforms argue that uniforms can increase students' safety in school and outside of school, as well as increasing students' ability to blend in and focus on learning without having to worry that their clothing choice might make them a target as such. I don't think this is such a strong issue in Japan, but you never know. So there are some of the advantages, but let's think a little bit more. In fact, there are other considerations to actually take on board. Okay, adopting pants as an option. Now that I think is quite an interesting idea. Okay, seeing this image instead. Okay, so if we look at it, a junior high school student, for example, went to school in new trousers, new pants, only to find she was the only girl wearing that type of outfit at her high school's entrance ceremony. The student had bought the pants at a nearby school uniform store in February before starting at an Osaka city-run school in April. She said she likes how comfortable they are, which is a fair point. One day, however, her mother received a call from her daughter's homeroom teacher. The teacher said, "We only allow LGBT individuals or children requiring other sorts of special care to wear pants," said the teacher. "Is your daughter suffering from such special problems that have yet to be shared with the school staff?" The student was told at the uniform shop that she could choose to wear trousers. She thus decided to purchase them. "I wonder why it was impossible for me to wear pants, given the female teachers all wear them," the student thought. Wow, this is quite interesting as it raised lots of different questions. A teacher asking a student whether they are LGBT constitutes human rights violation in itself, her parents said, which is absolutely true. The school operator ended up revising its rules to enable all students to choose between skirts and trousers. "I can now openly wear trousers," said the student, "but the decision. Everyone is delighted about their being able to choose whichever they like." The academy's principal said the reforms were significant for the school. So there was change as a result of this action. But why do we need such action? Well, harsh consequences do occur if you fail to comply, to follow the rules. Okay, here's another quick example related to uniforms, but this is to do with dyeing your hair. And if you look at this picture, we'll look at the hair roots. So you can see obviously this student has dyed their hair. Now, Japan has strict policies around hair color, dress, and other appearance, and students can face harsh consequences if they fail to comply. So Japan has strict policies around, as I said, hair color, dress, and other appearances, and there are concerns as a result. For example, a court ruled that a brown-haired teen should receive compensation, i.e. money, from her high school, where black hair is ubiquitous. In other words, expected by everyone. And she was penalized, the school penalized her for allegedly violating the school policy forbidding dyed hair. In other words, the school punished her because they believed that this student had dyed their hair. Though the girl maintained her hair is naturally brown, not dyed, naturally brown, school authorities inspected her hair roots, declared it dyed, and demanded she dye it black. So what did the student do? Initially, she complied. She agreed with this rule. But when she stopped dyeing and returned to her natural color, the school actually removed her desk from the classroom and erased her name from the school roster. She sued, thank goodness, and won compensation, but the court left the school's hair policy intact. So despite this, the school didn't change their rules. So that is a concern indeed. Also, just a final point, the popularity of wearing school uniforms. As you can see, there are lots of groups, as you know by this one, that wear school uniforms. Do you think it's right that uniforms should be seen as part of a fashion? Personally, I'm not keen on it, but I think that's because I'm old. But what do you think about that as well? Maybe having this fashion creates a better sense of confidence in wearing your school uniform. Anyway, so let's just go over the benefits, the pros. Okay, the benefits of school uniforms. So uniforms build school spirit. Less bullying occurs in schools, apparently. It saves times in the morning when getting ready. Improves school safety because everyone's wearing them. It's a clear, appropriate dress rule. Uniforms improve a school's reputation. Uniforms can increase student focus in their studies. Protection of school religious identity can occur as a result. And school truancy can be more easily identified. In other words, if students are outside school wearing their uniform, you know that they're not going to school. And it ensures appropriate sporting outfits as well. However, we look at the cons of school uniforms. So there's quite a few as well. Upfront uniforms basically cost. And as we said, it can cost quite a lot. There's a lack of freedom of expression. Uniforms teach gender norms, which might not be good. Children don't get to exercise free choice. Uniforms can violate religious expression. So in fact, it can go the opposite way to what we said earlier. Uniforms high cost social class differences between schools themselves for more the elitist type schools. There's less visible diversity. It's another thing for teachers to police, so they're having extra responsibilities, which they could use to study and teach instead. Parents need to manage laundry routines around school days as well, which can be a nightmare, and difficulty in finding the uniform itself. So these are the pros and cons. So I would like you again to go to one of the two sides, go to the pros on this side and go to the cons on that side and get ready to discuss. Thank you.